Back. So it's mid-July, absolutely unseasonable weather for Yorkshire this time of year. Decking is finished. The original plan was that this would be a quick job while I wait for the electrics to get done in the shed. They were done ages ago. I massively underestimated just how big an area this is. It's about 50 square meters. Just how much timber materials that would require, how much groundwork was required to get the space into the right condition to put the deck supports in, and then various other hiccups. The drainage for the conservatory, it turned out when I took the old deck up, was just running out under the old deck. It had been sort of piped into a non-existent soakaway. The ground's really compact here, so that took some serious faffing around to get squared away. So let's skip back to, I think, early April, and let's see where we started with this incredibly massive decking project. And for those of you that have watched some of the other videos in the series, or maybe subscribed, you'll notice that I've changed the channel name to Al's DIY Follies, which I think better encapsulates exactly what's going on here. I'm thinking of things to do that are way beyond my experience and capabilities, and then taking ages to do them, but at least hopefully learning something along the way. So if that's your kind of thing, then please do subscribe and join me on what appears to be an entire lifetime of building things in the garden. So welcome back. Last time you saw us putting the floor in and the insulation. This time a little bit more on the exterior. So the exterior of the shed itself is complete, but the surrounding of it looks like a bit of a war zone. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is clearing all this decking, leveling the ground. I need to dig a trench for the power to go into the shed, and getting the decking down around the shed, and then if I've got time I might build a little bit of a outdoor seating area as well. So we'll see how we go. I think the biggest part of this phase is just going to be clearing the ground before we even get to building the deck subframe. So let's have at it. So I've taken all of the old deck boards up and the subframe. The previous deck was on 2x4 joists, just resting on pavers. The decking that I've designed is on 2x6 joists, which will be supported on posts. So that's necessitated levelling out the ground a little bit, so I can fit the extra depth of the subframe in under the sill of the conservatory and the summer house, and to make sure that the deck level is below the damp-proof course of the conservatory, to avoid any problems there, and to make sure there's sufficient ventilation under the decking system as well. That's meant that we've had to scrape quite a lot of the ground off to get it level, and then also I've had to dig, or we've had to dig the trench for the power cable to the shed, which was definitely more work than expected. So next is filling in the trench and then finishing off leveling the ground. Then we can start to dig the holes for the supports. Happy days. So this trench takes the power from the house out to the shed. It's got to be at least, I think, 18 inches deep, and it's about probably 60 to 70 feet long, but it needs to be deep enough so you don't accidentally hit the cable with a spade whilst you're doing some gardening or some such. The first part of the structure is going to be 5 double width beams which are bolted together. They're going to sit on top of the posts, and then the joists are going to be mounted between those beams. It took a while looking at things like span tables to work out whether that would take the correct amount of load, but we worked out with a good margin to have a decent amount of people on the deck and it'd be within the load bearing capacity of the joists, the beams and the posts. So doing it that way necessitates less overall posts into the ground, so more, so each individual joist doesn't need to be supported on a post, just the beams themselves. So 4 of the posts are 3 meters tall because they're going to form part of the structure of the seating area. The rest of them are 1.8 meter posts, which I'm going to cut off at the appropriate height to mount the beams on. I figured that would be easier to do it that way than to dig the holes to a precise depth, given that the ground isn't perfectly level. So then obviously we had to make sure that each post was straight and level in each axis, square, plumb, so we wouldn't have any further problems with the beams. Did make a few errors with this as we went along. There was some of it that I rushed a little bit when I was working on my own, and it took a little bit of remedial effort when it came to installing the beams, but nothing too critical. The posts themselves are essentially just taking entirely downward force, so they're not really subject to any sideways shear force or any torsion or anything like that. So as long as they're in pretty sturdy and the beams are mounted squarely on top of them, they should do a pretty solid job. So where the beams sat between the taller posts, they had to be mounted on the joist hangers, as they would be on the ledger plate against the wall as well. Where the beams sit on top of the post everywhere else, they're merely just strapped down with some metal strapping to stop it from shifting side to side and keep it fairly secure. I fortunately had a boatload of rubble and broken pavers that I could use, as well as probably half a ton of hardcore that I could sprinkle on it as well to keep it weighed down. Something to consider if you're buying a significant amount of decking boards. These ones, when they arrived from the supplier Edex, which is a local supplier, they'd only freshly been treated, so they were still quite wet. I made a bit of an error in that I didn't store them particularly well. I stacked them up, didn't allow that much airflow around them, so as such a lot of them warped, turned into bananas, which made it all the more difficult when it came to installing them and keeping them straight. So I'm using 5mm spacers to make sure the boards are evenly spaced apart, so they get adequate ventilation through and rain can pass through them, etc., and to cover any expansion and contraction issues. And I'm putting 2 screws through each board into each joist. So something to bear in mind. It seems obvious. Think about how many decking boards you're going to be putting down, think about how many joists you're going to require, times the 2 together, and that's the number of screws that you're going to need, because it's going to be a lot. For this I used just over 2,000 screws, which was surprising to me when I ran out at 1,800 and needed to buy more. design of the deck, it's going to have a picture frame running around the edge of 3 boards, which run perpendicular to the main direction of the boards, and they're going to be stained a different colour. It's not immediately obvious before they're stained. In the far corner, they're going to be under the seating area, so it's not going to be seen, so I didn't need to mitre any corners in the far corner. But for the front sort of patio bit in front of the summer house itself, I needed to mitre those corners, which was easier than I expected and came out looking quite nice, and should, once stained, be a nice little feature. So I put this bamboo screening up around the edge to hide the ropey old fence. It'll ultimately be replaced with a new fence, maybe some trellis on the top, etc. But that's too big a job for now. Since shooting this, I've taken it all down and reinforced it with a couple of horizontal pieces, so it's more level and more reinforced. And I've also run the guttering downpipe from the summer house behind that, so it's out of view, so that's going to be draining out to one side into a water butt without taking up any space on the deck itself. And time to give everything a good wash down with the old Karcher. Something to be conscious of is don't use it on full pressure, because it will fur up the surface of the wood and damage it. So I'm just using it on a low setting just to get any dirt and sawdust and that kind of crap out of the grooves without stripping any of the treatment off or damaging any of the surface of the boards themselves. So that's it. Phase 1 of the decking done. Next time we'll have a crack at the seating area outside and staining the deck, etc. Getting the lighting done on the decking, and then we're going to move inside and finish the interior of the shed itself. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like it, and see you next time. Thank you very much.